and I will be your all host today. Joe, let me move it over to you.
Sure, Pete. My name is Joe Farry. I'm the Director of Transportation here at Rue Gilt. Been here for about 3 years. I spent most of my career running that Columbus, Ohio gamut of retailers: Abercrombie, Victoria's Secret, DSW, Burton Snowboards. I've been either in DC operations or transportation at all of those. So happy
Excellent.
to be here.
Great level of experience we've got with us today. Jeff, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jeff Faulconer. I'm the Senior Director for the Enterprise Solutions team. I've been here at Rue Gilt Groupe for about 8 years. Prior to this role, I was on our product team where we focused mostly on middle tier applications, specifically around OMS.
Awesome. And again, just more experience that we're bringing to the webinar here. We're going to jump into our next one, and we're going to start off with a poll. We want to talk about parcel shipping at Rue Gilt, especially volume swings and the types of products that you're shipping. And though we're going to start with Joe, we'd like to see from our audience, what's your shipping philosophy? How do you describe the way you're doing it? Are you a cost primary driver? Are you looking at how the customer experience is handled? Are you trying to balance that cost and customer experience as equally as possible? Or maybe you're still discovering that and you're in a transition from one to the other. So let's give it another few seconds here. And it does look like the balance is the goal. And with that, Joe, let me kick it over to you, because balance isn't exactly your all's goal. You guys have a very clear driver. Could you bring us into that?
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, Justin, a lot of people just think of it as going fast or being inexpensive. Really hitting that balance is important. But for us, we pivot oftentimes. So for those that don't know what Rue Gilt is, we're essentially the TJ Maxx of the online world, meaning that we sell off-price merchandise at a lower cost to our members. With low cost comes lower margins, and so cost is paramount for us most of the time. However, we will not let it degrade the member experience. So while we're the TJ Maxx of the online world, we also go, I call it higher into the SKUs, a lab-grown diamond bracelet, for example, Gucci bag, which you didn't put on the poll, I bet that would have won, a Gucci bag, or Ferragamo shoes, just high dollar expensive items. So at some point, cost structure breaks down for us where we're not willing to take the risk to save the dollar because we could lose the member forever. For us, a really good example of that is last year, a few days before Thanksgiving, we started noticing USPS shipments were getting not scanned into their network for several days at a time. UPS is one of our lowest cost providers. We like them. We have a great relationship with them, but they were having a failure locally here. At that point, we made the business decision as transportation, as business as a whole, to shut the post office off for the rest of peak. 4 days of them doing no label scans exposed us to roughly $500,000 in expense between customer calls, replacement orders, lost shipping costs. And so if we let that compound our busiest time of the year, we really would have been damaged. So kind of to frame it up, is cost is our driver because we have, we're a low margin business. I'm one of the biggest line items in the P&L, and my goal in life is to make that P&L smaller. But not at the point where we'll lose a customer, right? If you don't get your Gucci bag, you can buy it from somewhere else. We're not selling anything unique here. We're not like Abercrombie or someone that owns their own brand where you can never go anywhere else if you want that shirt. You could go somewhere else. So if we lose that trust with the member, we will potentially lose that person forever. So at the end of the day, our strategy is not just like this abstract, fast or slow or balance. It's really tactical, where cost leads at the front most of the year. And then we protect the customer with our tactics throughout the year to protect as much cost as we can, but not lose a member.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's not so much about you're guaranteeing next day delivery. You're not saying, okay, look, you buy from us and you'll have it tomorrow. Instead, it's whatever promise you make, you need to deliver that promise. So if it is a 3-day promise, whatever it takes to get that 3-day promise is what's really necessary.
Yep.
And I think it's really important to emphasize that there is still a balance there between the cost and the customer trust. And it does sound like you guys keep that as well. So Let's take this a step further and bring it inside the four walls, because you define strategy and now you have to execute it. So Jeff, before we kick over to you, let's do a quick poll as to where our audience is in their automation journey. So with that, we're basically asking how automated is your fulfillment process. Are you highly automated as a company? Are you partially automated? A little bit of manual, a little bit of automation. Are you currently evaluating automation options, or it doesn't apply to you? You'd like the manual solution that you've got, and that works out well for you. As we're seeing these votes come in, it looks like partial automation seems to rule the day, followed up shortly by people evaluating more automation options. And I think that kind of makes sense nowadays with where the labor costs have gone in the last decade. It really is something where it's very hard to be non-automated. And so as we go forward, Jeff, this one's going to go towards you. How does automation look like at Rue Gilt? I know we were just there yesterday, but still, how does it look like for the rest of us?
Well, you weren't here yesterday, but yeah, the whole team was here yesterday. So yeah, obviously automation is on everyone's mind. For, as Joe mentioned, getting orders out the door as quick as possible, but doing it in a cost-effective way is extremely important to us. For us, it's about selecting the right automation that meets our needs and meets our business. So here in our Kentucky facility, we have really three pieces of automation. First, and probably I would say the coolest, which is our Spark CVP auto boxer. I know, Justin, you've seen that before. That seems to be the one that everyone likes the most. Where we process mostly singles. Ideally, we use it for shoes, sunglasses, and our garment on hangers. Second, and really the most recent purchase, were two tension auto baggers. So we have one for Rue and we have one for Gilt. And we mostly process singles through those, single line items, mostly flat pack. Mm-hmm. And then our third,
branded packaging though, right? That's why there's one for each, right?
That's correct. Yeah, each one. We're having some conversations around whether or not we want to switch that up, but for now, yes, it's branded. So an operator will scan an item, it'll light up which machine that item should go to, right, based on the brand. And then our third piece of automation is a robotic put wall from Berkshire Grey. We use that to sort our multi-line orders. We do not use that for any of the garment on hangers or any large items just because of the cubby size. And like several people on the poll here, we do have about 60 plus pack stations that can handle both multi-line, multi-line and single line orders.
So it seems like there's a lot of variation inside your warehouse. Is automation, are you using it for everything, or what about like high value footwear?
We typically don't run the footwear through the bag machine. There are some limitations to the bag machine just because of how it's set up. So those are packed out manually through. We don't put any high value items or high value shoes in bags. We put them in boxes. But we do process some shoes through, in bags, but through the manual pack stations.
Yeah, I do remember when I was there a year or so ago, it was just the, you don't think about it as somebody that helps ship a lot of different things, that shoes can be in a box, relatively small, all the way up to boots, which can exceed a lot of the carrier's dimensional requirements. So yeah, operational complexity with enormous variations in size, multi-line orders, though automation may exist to solve specific problems, like you mentioned the Spark CVP, which does a great job for single line orders, and maybe if you've got goods that stack well on one another, that's great for that, but it won't solve everything. And this is where many operations fail. They try to force everything into automation rather than designing automation around particular types of business or particular problems. I want to move on to the next section, and honestly, this is where most companies struggle, which is how to balance cost, risk, and reliability. Joe, coming back to you here, how do you think about that balance between cost, risk, and reliability?
Yeah, that's That's the fun part of this job, right? So a good way to get costs out of the network, everybody knows, is to try to find regional providers or smaller providers that aren't that national footprint, UPS, FedEx, USPS in some cases. But for us, we can never lose that relationship with our national, who happens to be FedEx. We have a diverse network. We have hundreds of drop shippers. FedEx does a really nice job with our returns. Splitting that across several carriers would break the operation a little bit. And they generally do a good job on the express side. So I think us and other major retailers will never really drop that reliance on a national carrier at some point. But there are places where the regionals can succeed, right? So we have to get creative about moving volume away from the national where it makes sense and keeping it in the national where it makes sense and finding creative ways to do that. And we talked about earlier, Justin, driving cost is my North Star most of the time. And so it doesn't always seem rational to keep a FedEx agreement out of this building and shipping somewhere if I could get cost savings with OnTrack or another regional. Well, as an example of us and how we've been able to maintain that reliability and save costs is we zone skip. And some other operators on here might, okay, zone skip here in Kentucky, you're definitely zone skipping to California. Well, for us, it actually made most sense from a density perspective to zone skip into New York. Our zone 5 packages turn into zone 2 or 3 packages, and we save $1-ish on the parcel side, and I spend 50 cents to get it there. So net, I save 50 cents a package, which is a good cost per package savings, but I don't degrade my relationship with my national carrier because I'm zone skipping into their facility on the East Coast. So it's a creative way of getting cost out without doing the easy button, which is, okay, I'll give this much more volume to a carrier that has lower rates. But then you go back and you start hurting your national relationship. So that's been a really successful solution for us. But we also make some intentional decisions as a business, which I find interesting. I've just never done this before. If you're a high volume purchaser, if you go to our website and buy things twice a day and your order comes in, we've identified you as that, and we will hold on to your order till the end of the day because you might make another one. So we'll turn those 2 orders into 1, turn 4 boxes into 2, whatever the maths, and we'll save money that way. But it forces us to be very clear-eyed about how fast our network is. So we intentionally slowed it in on the click-to-ship side of the business. We have to make sure, back to our original point, that we still can keep our promise within our network, even though we go backwards one day on the click-to-ship part of the customer experience. That's where we have to make sure that we have the right network in place that's reliable enough so we can slow it down where it needs to go slow on the front end and make the final delivery on time in full so the customer's still happy and was none the wiser that we held on to their order. So for us, balance is not just like cost for service. We have to manage cost, risk, reliability, and commercial terms to make sure we're doing all of the right things to protect the network and protect our relationships with all those carriers. If I spread myself too thin, everybody's like, oh, here comes this guy again with his 200 packages a day. I'm not giving you, like, I have to give everybody something, or we become a very small fish in a big pond as opposed to a medium-sized fish in a few ponds.
That's an interesting operational take. And as we switch over more towards the technical take, Jeff, what's your thoughts on that cost, risk, and reliability balancing act that we all have to do?
Yeah, I mean, as Joe said, I mean, we're constantly looking to save money, but also to meet or exceed expectations for our members. While we're always thinking about the savings part of it, again, as Joe said earlier, we do not want to disappoint customers. That's a balancing act that we have to play every day. A disappointed customer will move on. They don't get their package in time. There are other retailers out there and they will not come back. So it is a game that we play daily to ensure that we meet those expectations and don't disappoint customers. I think we know we can push the limits on some of our processes, to maybe squeeze a little bit of extra cost out of it, but we have to make that decision. Does it come at the, does it impact the customer? And we make those decisions pretty frequently. My team, Joe's team, the operations team, we get together on a, weekly basis or multiple times a week to talk through some of these decisions to make sure that we're making the right decisions for the customers. So, we are always in lockstep, always aligned, and always keeping those customers in the costs, in our decision making.
I think, I'm sorry, this is not scripted. That's part of the what's unique here is I've never been this lockstep with my tech team.
Yep.
And it's paid dividends, right? Usually it's an email, set up a meeting 2 days down the line. Everybody gets a room. You have to explain to them transportation. They have to explain to you technology. We're very physically close right now, but we're very close on a day-to-day work basis that Jeff's team understands transportation better than any tech team I've ever worked with. And I have enough knowledge to be dangerous on the tech side. And I think that's the real value of having those relationships, even internally.
Yeah, I think over the course, especially over the course of the last couple of years, during peak, we're trying new things, right? We're when Joe came on, he had some ideas to try out, and this is new to us too. So we're just learning as we go. So that relationship has really been key.
Yeah, and I think that some of this comes down to it, and I'm going to go back to the fact that our team was on site just yesterday. That I was physically on site with you guys, however many months ago it was, and we didn't just sit in the conference room, right? We walked the floor. We went out and had the 3/4 way conversation between us as the vendor, the IT staff there, the operations staff, and the business staff, which all have different needs and limitations. And sitting out there on the floor, sometimes having to find a little bit quieter place, but sitting out there on the floor and asking the questions and actually hearing some feedback from the operators informed, I think, all of the decision-making parties as to what we need to do. And I think that really changes the way the solution is deployed, because as a vendor, I feel really happy to be out there and not only hear from the IT folks with the business limitations, or with the technical limitations, with the tech stack that is, well, let's face it, has a weight and a direction of its own, along with the operations folks that, well, they have a direction and a North Star they've been pushing at for months, if not years. Bringing all that together really does make us able to provide a better solution in the long run, because we're tweaking what we're doing to the physical, sometimes the very physical and technical realities that we have in place that create the constraints associated with the business outcome, which is a very high expectation meeting for your customers. I think that's really important. And so it's more than just, I got in my notes here to talk about things like carrier rationalization, right? Joe's talking about, why do I bring certain carriers on board? How do I protect my national carrier relationship? That under/over diversification and the creative ways you can do about it, I think that's really important. But the same logic applies inside the four walls of your warehouses, not just in between carriers. Do we optimize rates but ignore execution impact? Do we create things that are great for the bottom line but create operational pains out there? Or do we do it the other way? And operationally, it's really beautiful, but the tech stack becomes so fragile because of what we've done that we interrupt operations. So there's just so much that needs to get talked about. It's not just optimization of rates at the cost of all the downstream operational processes that occur. So, you guys have anything else you want to add to this section before we move on?
No, I think you covered it. We'll talk a little bit more about the partnership in a little bit.
All right, let's move on then, because I think we want to go to stress test a couple things here, because everything we've talked about works until peak hits, right? Peak is the ultimate stress test. One last poll before we get going. Audience, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to peak? Is it carrier capacity and reliability, cost management and rate control, especially with the peak season surcharges nowadays, labor costs, visibility and exception management, or is it speed of execution? Do you just have so many orders that between operations and well, maybe some limitations of the way it's been implemented. You can't keep up with the with the orders that are available for you. So I think that's a really interesting and important question to make sure that we are asking as we go forward. And it looks like carrier capacity and reliability is really the number one, followed very closely by cost controls. So with that in mind, Joe, when you think about peak season and disruption and what changes, how do you prepare, especially with a company that where the experience is number one, right? Where you guys are trying to exceed the carrier's 97% accuracy by a significant margin. What is that? What is that preparation? How do you prep for that?
Yeah, so I agree with the poll actually. So peak for us changes everything. Where I was saying cost is the North Star, I've said that a few times. We move reliability or customer experience right to the front of the line to the point where we will, cost still matters, but we will make decisions so that we can hit our company goal. And like you kind of alluded to, Justin, ours is aggressive. I worked at retailers before, and I don't think I've seen this high of a goal to have a 99.8% on-time delivery by holiday. It's widely spouted here at Rue every other day since October that it's the most important time of the year. It's the most important time of the year, and that's how we view it. If you ruin someone's Christmas, they're not coming back. So we do a lot of work to make sure that we hit that 99.8% get it by holiday promise. We've first and the easiest thing to do is we front run all carrier cutoffs. So if a carrier says your last cutoff date's the 13th, we're going to be cut off on that service on the 10th. Will we spend more money because we have to upgrade beyond that? Yeah, we will. But we'll maintain that customer's trust in us for years to come and hopefully win their business over and over. So we build that flexibility into the network ahead of time, I think is key. In the moment, when I think about peak planning, the old school way to think of it or used to is like volume and what carrier is going to take which volume and make sure they're prepared to take all the volume. And that I call your peak plan. That never works. Something always happens. So you should have a flexibility built into your plan. And we spend an extraordinary amount of time on building that flexibility in early on in the year. So I won't have time to wait for an IT ticket or hey, Jeff tells me it's a code blackout. I don't even know what that means, but I just know I can't do stuff. So we can't have those things happen during peak. We need to build that flexibility in the beginning of the year or in the mid part of the year so that you can execute on it when it's time. A good example of that was, like I mentioned earlier, that we had to shut the post office off for peak. And I didn't have to get on a meeting. I just called Jeff like, hey, I shut them off. He's like, use carrier volume balancing inside ProShip, lock them down to one package a day, and they're off. Okay, I was done in 5 minutes, right? It was great. Not great because I had to shut a carrier off. It was great because I could execute on a plan. So for me, being successful in peak is make sure you build the flexibility on the front end. You'll likely need to use it during peak, but don't try to build your flexibility in November. Like, oh, you know what? I have a great idea. We should be able to shut a carrier off or use date shopping to make sure certain carriers get cut off on certain days. That needs to be built, tested, and run through before the leaves start changing. Well, if you live in California, but like if in those Midwest people, when the leaves start changing, that should be already built. So that's probably our biggest lesson. Peak's not just a time to discover that; it's time to use it. There's always chaos. Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. So always get punched in the face in peak. So always have some sort of backup plan or flexibility to make sure your promises happen to your for your members or your customers in some people's cases.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback a little bit on what Joe said. I mean, we prepare so much prior to hitting the actual peak that the day-to-day is pretty routine, right? I mean, we've got it pretty nailed down. We've got a great plan for it. We meet, like I said, during peak, we're meeting daily. Heading into peak, we're meeting multiple times a week. We have a calendar where Joe is, constantly putting all the things that he needs to change and when. So everybody knows their role as we hit peak. So being prepared as you go into it is, has helped us tremendously to be prepared.
Yeah, and I hate meetings. I
He
hate
does.
meetings. I hate meetings for the sake of meetings. But with that daily meeting that I put out there is kind of like, to me, working out a muscle. So we might not have a whole lot to discuss on November 1st, but people start getting that muscle of getting into the cadence of every day we're going to meet, we're going to talk about the plan. So November 1st through the 10th, it's a 5-minute meeting, just any questions about the long-term scope. But as we get deeper into November and December, it's a really passionate, fun meeting to be in, because we're making decisions that day that'll affect the next 6 days. And we could completely unwind that decision the following day if we found out it didn't work. So it's a nice muscle to work in the beginning. It seems like overkill, but I think it comes out for us as a really great way to build relationships internally and make sure everybody understands what's going on. So we're all singing the same song with leadership asked what's going on this week with our Get It for Holiday promise.
You guys have covered so much that I want to make sure that our audience heard. Number one, I love that meeting that you guys start before you need the meeting, right? The fact that everybody gets to know one another, what you get to understand which each department's key triggers are, who to call in for what the communication change is going to be, because I'm sure that changes every year. All these things. Second, the testing itself. I am a big fan of what I refer to as compression testing. Now, what the idea behind that is, hey, look, Father's Day is about to come up. If you have a mini peak on Father's Day, it's a mini peak. Treat it like peak. Do everything you would normally do. Make sure that you've trained temporary workers. Make sure that maybe you hold orders and you don't start processing orders until noon when you would normally start at 10 a.m. or 8 a.m. or something like that. So you have that smaller period, still with plenty of recovery time, but you have that smaller period where you're actually acting like it is Cyber Monday. It is whatever your busiest day of the year is. So you can actually test and break your systems. The second thing that you mentioned is controls in the hands of the customer, whether it's operation or IT. That's a decision that each company has to make themselves. But the fact that internally you could say, you know what, I don't want to use the United States Post Office, so I'm going to leverage a feature in the product to turn it all the way down. I'm going to dial that knob on my own. I don't have to go to my vendor to do that. I think that's a second thing that makes that reaction time so much faster. Joe, you mentioned we'll make a decision on Monday and we'll reverse that decision on Tuesday because new data has come. Well, if you're making changes that quickly, if the reality of your experience is happening in a way that you need to be able to throw levers, adjust knobs, and change set points, well, during peak, lots of people have that problem. You don't want to be dependent upon a third party to be able to make those changes. So it really is about planning tighter, committing earlier, and practicing all of this stuff. And I've seen you guys do some practicing already, so I love that. So we've covered a lot here. Let's step back for a second and translate this into action. Jeff, from your perspective, what are the biggest lessons here for transportation, IT, and operations leaders trying to do something similar? You guys have spent years building this. What's your recommendation of somebody trying to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, so I mean, you've heard us touch on it a few different times, but we really look at, we really look at our teams as one team. So we don't look at it as tech and operations. We look at it as one team with shared accountability. As Joe said, we meet several times a week. We talk through different bottlenecks, different solutions that he's looking for from the transportation side of things, whether or operations, just to make sure we have total alignment. And this isn't just a internal philosophy. It's something that we extend to our external partners as well. Justin, you mentioned we had your team here yesterday. We frequently bring in vendors and partners that we work with to take a look at our operations to help us, think about ways that we might be able to, brainstorm new opportunities or move the business forward. One example is the Ship app. So Justin was here about 8 months or so ago, where we were talking, just brainstorming some ideas. We had some questions and some comments about, how can we re-rate packages at pack stations and do it in a cost-effective way. We had some vendors that gave us some proposals that were very, very expensive, very long to implement. And Justin threw out the idea of, hey, what if we tried this ship app? It's a product that we have that that is in the market right now for a few different customers. Would you guys like to try it? So out of that meeting came a new project that we've been implementing over the course of the last several months. It's been a great cost saver, to be honest. It's come with its bumps, but we're working with ProShip on that. We have a partnership with them where they're actually trying to help us with some of the usability issues. But all in all, it's been a fantastic project to work on with ProShip. And it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have that relationship with not just internal but external partners as well. So again, I would say we're all one team. We can't do it. Technology doesn't do it alone. Operations doesn't do it alone. We have to, come together as one team to help solve some problems.
Yeah, and not every customer is a good fit for taking a product in a new direction. That's why it was approached the way it was. That's why we were pretty frank, saying that it wouldn't meet all of your needs, but it would be more cost effective than some of your other options out there if you were willing to accept that there will be bumps in that road. And of course, us coming back out to help smooth some of those bumps out in the road is definitely something that we think is critical to us being a good vendor with you. And I think that one thing I'd love to pull out here, because it came up earlier, is the idea of alignment, right? You guys have been talking about alignment inside Rue Gilt, from leadership expectations to operational execution to vendor partnerships. It all just has to connect. And, sometimes you can do that all over video conference and things of that nature. And sometimes you just got to get in that warehouse and walk it together. So I want to sum up a couple of things here. I want to talk about the fact that, from Joe's point of view, that top-down alignment of the 99.8% on-time expectation. Customer experience starts from leadership and then flows into execution, and then all the way down to us in vendor selection, right? Seeing operations in person leads to better solutions, leads to opportunities. Maybe not every opportunity is a great fit for you as a shipper, but where it is a good fit, not only can it help the vendor expand the product line, but in this case, we can do it at potentially a significant cost savings for a similar level of functionality. And then the warehouse walkthrough reveals constraints that no call ever can. The reality is I'm often known for my dumb questions, right? Air quotes out on the floor, because doing those quote unquote dumb questions actually allows us to understand, to ensure that we're not making assumptions, because we have our own language. I've been doing this for 26 years, and we have some very specific language inside ProShip. And Rue Gilt's been around for a long time, and they have their own language. The fact that you both have come from other backgrounds, there's language you bring there. And the only way to ensure that we're all talking the same thing is to ask the quote unquote dumb question. And then because of that, we're able to do things like find solutions that may be cheaper and faster than your WMS or your ERP vendor might provide you. And that hopefully that helps you lead to great vendor relationships so that you can discover any blind spots and things of that nature. So, gentlemen, let me throw it back over to you here before we move on to our next slide. Any other things about the shipping app, or any other things that we've been working with, and maybe it's not even ProShip, but anything that you guys want to talk about for those remaining lessons for that whole not just software stack but communication stack, transportation, IT, operations executives that we may want to throw in here.
I mean, I guess I'll just I'll just put a point on what you said, Justin. Those site visits are super helpful. You see things in a different, you go and see a lot of customers. We're here doing things one way, and just walking the floor with us and, picking up things that we might not pick up because we see them every day is really key. It's helped us in a few different areas. So, another lesson learned would be to get your vendors to come on site, get your vendors to experience the issues and the problems that you're seeing on the floor and every day. It helps, tremendously.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I don't put a label on a package every year, I feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, the ideation session that went on here yesterday with ProShip specifically, I sat in this room and I didn't understand a lot of what they were JSON and JavaScript, but like there was all these ideas that came up. 9 out of 10 of them were shot down. Like, oh, that won't work because of this. Oh yeah, and then that 10th idea happened, and we're like, oh, we can drive that time down by 4 seconds, or whatever the problem we were trying to solve. So your dumb question thing, Justin, like those weren't necessarily dumb, but people were stacking their information as they coupled together what they saw and being in a big group together. So just having that relationship internally and with your vendors is important, because then people are willing to fail in front of you and fail fast. Say, I have an idea, and you're not going to be like, that's a dumb idea. You just say, well, that won't work because of this, but then they've learned and they can help you. I think that those relationships internally and externally are just super important.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Last question before we open it up for QA. You've both been doing this for a while. You both are experienced in your industry. You've clearly evolved how you approach these problems. If you could go back to your past self and give one piece of advice, what would it be? Joe, let's start with you.
So I would say for me, and this might just be personal, for every great idea you have, you need to be your own skeptic and try to kill that thing twice before you start running down the hall saying I've saved $1 million. I learned that early on in my career, right? That people have a tendency that I have this great idea and they drive their analysis towards the idea as opposed to letting the analysis or whatever it is drive you to the solution. So being your own skeptic and not thinking you're always the smartest person in the room or have the greatest idea that's unable to fail, taking your work and trying to beat it up and kill it until you then take it to somebody to present it to as an opportunity is something I would have told my younger self to do. Like, slow down, man, check it. Make sure you're not doing any self-fulfilling prophecies and figuring out like things on your own. And then you have an AI, it's the same way. Like, AI will tell you that you're the smartest guy. Like, great idea, Joe. And I'm like, well, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. So it's the same sort of thing I would apply to myself, is just to make sure you try to be your own critic first.
Excellent. And Jeff, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback on what I said earlier, which is to really invest in these partnerships, both internally and externally, early on. I think when my younger self was it's just starting off, it was mostly putting your head down and focusing to make sure you get your goals done, getting your team's goals done. But the longer I've been doing this, and the better we've been working together, it really it makes a lot of sense to have that one team mentality. Break those silos down. Make sure that you are all on the same page, that you're marching to the same drum, and the success will follow.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And of course, in our chat, it seems like there's a little bit of rivalry as to which team externally to their companies should be the best team, whether you seem to be in the Chicagoland area or the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. So we won't call too much into that whole rivalry there, best in the NFL. But let's go ahead and let's open things up to our QA. As a reminder, you can submit questions. We've got quite a bit of them. If we can't get back to you at this point in time, we will respond. Our team will respond after this, and my team will let me know when we're going to do the drawing. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first question is how much does a sustainable relationship with vendors carriers play when deciding who to work with? So that's how much does a sustainable relationship with vendors / carriers play when deciding who to work with? Gentlemen?
I'll jump in and start. From a tech standpoint, it matters a lot. We want to make sure we're able to have these this open line of communication, be able to be really, really good partners to bring folks in here that are willing to work with us. very closely on a number of different issues. We talk when we're looking at new vendors, we have conversations with some of their existing customers to see how they actually, how good they are at that, how good they are at communication, how good they are being, sharing their roadmaps and so on, and just kind of pressure testing a bit. So in technology, it plays a very big role.
Yeah, for me on the, especially the carrier side, building that good relationship with them and making sure that you understand their business as well as they are trying to understand yours. So you can kind of lead the horse to water and say, here are the packages I think are good for you and what you can provide us. Maybe you want these over here, fine, but you're going to have to change your premise a little bit. FedEx famously has said recently, we don't want your t-shirts. We sell t-shirts, and the way they've priced us, the t-shirts have gone elsewhere, but I'm giving them what they want and maintaining that relationship on our side too, make sure that they're happy and fed while still trying to drive costs down with my other vendors. So not just going lowest cost relationships be damned. You need to kind of manage that relationship and make sure that you're always, protected in a stable network after you've made changes and keeping the same relationships with those carriers and growing new ones.
All right, so moving on to the next question. This one's kind of got some layers in it, so we're probably going to ask it, or probably going to get some interesting different answers. There's a wide variety of automation options in the marketplace. Are you looking more to lower costs on singles and doubles, or large CapEx projects with longer ROIs but larger returns in the long run? So how are you guys kind of weighing all these options that you've got? Because there's a ton of them, clearly.
Yeah, right. To be 100% honest, right now we are kind of sticking with what we have for automation. In terms of ROI, when we make big capital investments, the ROI really has to be within 12 to 15 months. And right now we sort of, we're kind of good with what we have. We're not looking into whether it's robots or another put wall, but essentially really kind of maximizing what we have. So I guess in terms of looking at new automation right now, that's kind of all on hold while we maximize what we have.
Excellent. Yeah, and I can see that. So it's one of those things where I know for us, if we can't calculate a sub 12 month ROI for our customers, we rarely recommend something unless they're clearly asking for it. Mm-hmm. This one, Joe's going to go to you. When you zone skip from Ohio to New Jersey, how do you set up the shipment so it legitimately shows New Jersey as the origin? Operationally, in the carrier size, what chain of custody that keeps it compliant? What documentation, scans, SLA, language matters most? What are the common implementation pitfalls? Billing correction, charges, address, permit issues, lost acceptance scams, and how do you avoid them? Now, I'm actually going to jump in here first for a second and say that this is what at ProShip we refer to as a multi-leg shipment. And depending upon how you want to do this, you may want your shipping software to create one or both of those legs. Generally, you want it to create the last leg. So if we're pulling into New Jersey, we want to make sure we've got a label that goes to the final recipient that originates in that New Jersey sort facility. It is up to you whether or not you want us to take into account the line haul costs associated with it, as well as potentially gather the information to create that bill of lading. So that's going to vary by customer to customer. Joe, if you want to talk about some of the other parts of that, I'm sure that the audience would appreciate it.
Yeah, so for us, we had to, like you mentioned, we had to set up that account with FedEx based on the way we were built to systemically exist in Keysby, New Jersey, not Louisville, Kentucky. So that's step one, that we had to break a whole new account off. Then step two is working with Jeff's team on here are all the zip codes I want to service with the zone skip truck. Then you run the analysis and see if it's a savings. I covered earlier that it's about a 50-cent per package savings. And I thought that was going to be the hard part, was coming up with the savings and filling up the truck and getting a new FedEx account. Little did I know that it was a kind of a legal tumbleweed. To your point about whoever asked the question, to your point about chain of custody and how we make it work, we work directly with FedEx brokerage. So that was a nice and neat package for us. So ProShip creates the label, just the FedEx label from Keysby, New Jersey. Our sortation system sees that that's the Keysby account, kicks it down to the Keysby door. And we have associates in there packing it like Tetris, right? Because the more that goes into that truck, the more money I save per package, because that's sunk cost. It's going there for X amount of dollars, whether there's one carton on it or 5,000. So using FedEx brokerage, we maintain liability until it leaves our building for all packages. But we do have a report that ProShip us built to give us the value and the bill of lading for that truckload. And we worked with our insurance company, and we raised our cargo liability with the carrier so we could cover about $1 million a load. And then our insurance company asked us to provide a certain subset of information, which ProShip helped us do. Say, here's everything that's on that truck. Here's the cost value of everything on that truck. So my boss, if he's even here, we'll see. He loves the statement of, oh, the truck went into the ditch and caught on fire. If that were to happen, we have increased cargo liability, right? Because FedEx isn't going to give us a claim. Increased cargo liability, and our insurance comes on top and covers the balance of the load based on us being compliant with their requests. So getting the legal part of the zone skip was actually a lot harder than doing the functionality. It was easy. We created a new account, diverted it down the right lane, called FedEx. They picked it up every day. So that would be the watch out if anybody's going to zone skip or try something like that. Once you put it in, you don't put it directly in a FedEx truck. You put it in a broker's truck for a day. You end up having some weirdness with custody. From an SLA perspective, part of that question, we have noticed that it's actually faster than standard FedEx, even though we hold some packages for a whole day. That truck teams from here to New Jersey overnight, so it'll leave today at 4 and it'll be in New Jersey at 6 in the morning, and they'll unload it sometime during the day tomorrow. Whereas a regular FedEx truck, because the Indy gets sorted 5 times before it hits New York. So there is some wonkiness that I had to cover with customer service. So, hey, you're not going to see a scan sometimes in 48 hours. So if your members call, that's a why. But click to porch, they'll get it probably faster than if we didn't zone skip it. So it was a very simple idea that surprised me with a lot of different breakoffs that I had to solve for that were learning experiences, like all the legal chain of custody.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I always like to use the phrase "simple is never easy." So once you do the work, it becomes simple, but getting there is often not easy. All right, so we've got 4 minutes and 4 questions remaining. So we may not get to all the questions. Let me keep pushing here. How does ProShip integrate with AI-powered route optimization, predictive analytics? In what ways can ProShip shipping data be analyzed, leveraged by AI models, yada, yada, yada. So this is all about where does AI fit in shipment execution? And I'm going to quickly say it doesn't fit in creating labels. It doesn't fit in generating costs. It doesn't fit in communicating with the carrier. Where it does fit is in the piece of how long it's going to take that particular service to get from the origin to the destination. ProShip is already set up to allow what we refer to as Ultra TNT to accept either whether it's a hard-coded time in transit change. So Joe may decide that UPS or from Kentucky to Ohio says that it's a 2-day service. No, it's now a 3-day service. He could make that individual change if he wanted to, or Jeff's team could go ahead and run an analysis and say, hey, here's an entire file with every single one of our origins and all 42,000 destination zip codes, or the first 3 of the zips, and say, this is the way we want this for every single carrier service. Or finally, you could be using either with your own or with an external company. There are many of them that are starting to put this information out, AI-driven information to feed into that. In the engine itself, it's not being calculated in real-time AI. It shouldn't be. That is something that takes a lot of time to calculate and therefore should be run in batches. In real time, the system can take that altered time in transit and leverage it in order to ensure that we are taking advantage of what we expect, what we predict, AI, what we predict that time in transit to be, rather than what the carrier has advertised it to be. All right, moving forward, since Rue Gilt focuses on premium brands, how do you ensure that cost control techniques like using budget carriers or consolidated shipping don't degrade the unboxing experience and perceived value of your high-end brand?
So a lot of it does have to do with the packaging, I believe. That it comes in branded, nice packaging. We change it for holiday. And back to like one of the first things we talked about is we will use budget, low cost carriers because we have to drive margin. But to a point. And at the point where we think it's affecting the member, we will stop and use a more premium carrier to solve those problems. So we don't always think about the unboxing experience, but it is built into that branded box. We try to have really clean, crisp tracking updates. It's not about sometimes not about how fast you get there. As long as the customer believes they're going to get it when you say they're going to get it, they're happy. So we try to make that solid and always keep our promises.
Excellent. All right. And last question we're going to have time for from our audience. How could or should carrier mixes change if companies prioritize flexibility and diversification over established single carrier habits?
I think you need to start with your single carrier, right? You have to have an understanding of how much you can move without getting into a violation problem with your contract. Once you know that number, and then the next step is what's your technology. So ProShip for us allows us to move carriers around. So so that hurdle's gone, right? Some people, you might want to get away from a single carrier, but if you don't have a rate shopping engine, you can want anything you want. You can't have it. You need a way to be able to make those different decisions based on business rules. And then it's about, we've taken the approach of being very honest with our national carrier and said, hey, you said you don't want t-shirts. We're going to look for a place to put our t-shirts. And they sometimes 2 years ago, they said, no, here's better pricing. We're keeping those t-shirts. That's easy. And sometimes like, yeah, go ahead. So then we put that not out for bid, but we started looking around for opportunities to save money on this example on t-shirts. So I believe back to relationships, you maintain that relationship with your national, your big provider, and work with them to get the diversity you need and the flexibility you need to make your business successful. So it benefits both parties. Your margin maybe goes up for them. You're around 2 years from now because you saved costs, and they still maintain a big chunk of your business.
Nice. All right. Well, I really appreciate time from both of you today. It was excellent for both of you to bring all the great value in the conversation. I want to thank everybody who's joined and participated. We got a lot of chats. We got a lot of questions. It was really great. Now for the portion you've all been waiting for and stuck around because we're moving to the live giveaway portion. As you've been watching, our team has been tracking engagement throughout the session to choose winners at random. Sounds like we got our first giveaway winner selected. Before we get to it, quick note to our winners, you'll receive an email from us after the webinar. When you go to claim your gift, just confirm your shipping address so we can get everything sent out. First, the Titleist Tea Time Collection. This goes to, and I did not practice names beforehand, so this will be fun, Peter Bogolaski of Branch Furniture. Hopefully I did not murder that last name too much. Next is the Don Julio 1942 with custom engraving, a favorite of Joe's, so we had to include it. And the winner is Mike Cherubino of Maurice's, an existing customer, great. Number 3, and one of my favorites, the Stock Bluetooth earbuds, a personal favorite of mine, I swear by, and the winner is Mawaj Everett. Maj, sorry, yeah, doing this too fast. So Maj, you've got the Shock Bluetooth earbuds. They're great. You can hear everything around you while you're outside. It's pretty cool. And then conclude the giveaway. Our final item is the lab-grown diamond bracelet, something specifically from Rue Gilt's and Rue La La brand. And the winner is Christy Watkins of FTD. Winners, watch for your email to claim your prize, confirm your address. We can get those things sent out for you today. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you again to Jeff and Joe, our speakers. This was great. And hopefully everybody will have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.